Someone told me I can't make a video covering the entire history of PlayStation, from the PS1 all the way to the PS5 Pro, in under 3 minutes and still make it interesting and funny. To that, I say, hold my beer. Once upon a time, in the 1990s, Sony was just minding its own business, making TVs and Walkman, when Nintendo came knocking. We want to make a CD add-on for the SNES, Nintendo said, likely thinking, what could go wrong? Sony thought, all right, why not? So, they got to work. Sony even gave it a snazzy name, the PlayStation. Everything was going well, until Nintendo dumped Sony at the altar in 1991 and ran off with Philips instead. Out. Now, Sony was heartbroken and maybe a bit ticked off. They'd done all this work on this gaming device, only to be left high and dry. But then, Sony had an idea. What if we made this console anyway? So they did, and thus, in 1994, the PlayStation was born. It showed up in Japan with a snazzy gray box and CDs that spun like the future. Sony gave birth to some of the classic Final Fantasy VII, Resident Evil, Metal Gear Solid, and, let's not forget, Crash Bandicoot, that orange furball who looked like he'd chugged 10 cans of soda. After tasting success, Sony thought, why stop here? So in 2000, they dropped the PlayStation 2, and it was like the rock star of console. It played DVD, had games with graphics that made jaws drop, and became the console of choice for over 155 million people. If you didn't have a PS2 back then, you probably had a friend who did, and you definitely wanted one. Grand Theft Auto 3, God of War, Ratchet, and Clank. Sony's lineup was unstoppable, but then came the PlayStation 3. Sony thought, let's give people a Blu-ray player and ask for, say $600. Gamers everywhere win. Sony had high hope, but the PS3 was like that overachiever who tries a little too hard. Its launch wasn't exactly smooth, and they had to go toe-to-toe with the Xbox 360, which was snatching up players with its cheaper price tag and Halo fandom. After a few awkward years, though, Sony finally found its stride, thanks to games like Uncharted and The Last of Us, and by the end, the PS3 did win heart, just a bit late to the party. Then came the PlayStation 4 in 2013. Sony took one look at the PS3's launch price and said, let's not do that again. Instead, they priced it at $400, made it all about the game, and threw shade at Xbox's always online and no game policy. Gamers were all in. The PS4 was a smash hit with exclusives like Bloodborne, Spider-Man, and God of War. Sony could do no wrong. It was like the console version of Leonardo DiCaprio at the Oscars, finally getting the recognition it deserved. By the time the PS5 came around in 2020, Sony had perfected its console magic. They threw in lightning-fast loading times, high-definition graphics, and made it look like a space-age Wi-Fi router. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. The PS5 became rarer than a unicorn during a chip shortage, leaving gamers desperately refreshing websites hunting it down like the Holy Grail. And so, here are. Sony's still going strong, with the PS5 Pro in the mix, and gamers hyped for every new exclusive. They went from heartbroken tech partner to king of console, with millions of fans worldwide still eager to see what they'll pull out of the hat next.